How are you feeling today? There is a kind of wound no one notices. It has no sound of crying, no bruise, no clear memory to tell. Only silence. A child walks into a room, looks around, and instinctively withdraws as if their very presence is too much for the world. In conversations, they listen more than they speak, and when they finally want to say something, their voice tightens, because they have learned that no one really wants to hear. As they grow up, that child becomes someone who fears being a burden, who worries that every glance might reveal their perceived unimportance, even in moments of success when praised, when noticed. A small voice inside whispers, "Don't believe it. They'll forget soon enough." Deep down, they have come to see invisibility as their most natural state, not by choice, but because, since childhood, they learned that to be seen was a luxury, and so for years they survived by becoming smaller. They live like smoke, present, but not quite there. They smile when expected, nod when needed, and quietly fade when the room gets a little too full. Maybe you've met someone like that, or maybe that person is you. No one is born feeling invisible. Invisibility is a habit formed little by little each time a child calls out and no one answers. At first, they still try. "Dad, Mom, look at me." But the adult's eyes are busy. Their voices drift somewhere behind a haze of distraction, and replies slowly dissolve in the air. Then one day, the child stops calling. Not because they've run out of things to say, but because they've understood no one is listening. From that moment, silence seeps into the brain. And every neuron begins to learn the rhythm of indifference. Psychologists call this the internalized neglect schema, a pattern of abandonment engraved deep within the unconscious. Each time they're ignored, the brain records a tiny message: "My needs are a nuisance. I'm not worth anyone's pause." And so it began as a fleeting sadness, becomes the mind's operating system. The child grows up carrying that script, like a radio that can only tune into silence. When someone says, "I care about you," they hear it, but they don't believe it. When someone loves them genuinely, they still hesitate, still pull away, because their brain has learned that care never lasts. There is a cruel paradox here. Children who were once ignored often grow into adults who listen the most deeply, but they listen to others, at the cost of never hearing themselves. Not every wound comes from shouting or violence. Occasionally, the deepest wounds are born from absence. A child might never be hit, never be scolded, and yet still grow up feeling forgotten inside their own homes. No one means to hurt them. It's just that no one is really there. A family dinner where everyone stares at their phones. A birthday celebrated hastily amid the noise of work. A parent's glance that passes by, leaving before it truly meets the child's eyes. On the surface, everything seems fine. No tragedy, no tears. But inside the child's mind, a quiet hollow begins to form. A place where they start to wonder, if no one sees me, do I really exist? That is the most insidious kind of abuse. Abuse by silence. It has no name, no measure, yet it seeps into every nerve, every heartbeat, every breath. Because for a child, to be seen is not just comforting, it is proof of existence. When no one responds, when their words fall into emptiness, the child doesn't think their parents are busy. They think, "I'm not important enough to be heard." At that point, the child's sense of worth starts to erode. There are children like that, who learn to stay silent in order to be loved, who learn to be obedient to avoid being abandoned, who learn to smile even when their hearts are hollow. That isn't strength. It's a quiet kind of survival. The most frightening thing about neglect isn't memory, it's the way the body quietly remembers. A child may forget the day they were ignored, forget the night their parents turned away, but the body does not forget. In every breath, every unconscious reaction, it holds an ancient message. Don't expect anyone to stay. Each time the child reaches out and no one responds, a tiny spark of fear lights up in the brain. Cortisol, the stress hormone, seeps into the bloodstream, and the nervous system begins to learn tension as a survival reflex. Over time, that tension becomes the baseline. No event, no shouting is needed, just silence, and the brain understands, I'm about to be abandoned. So when they grow up, they startle at someone's silence. They grow anxious when a message goes unanswered. They crumble when they sense distance, not because they are weak, but because their bodies were never taught that silence can also be safe. The paradox is that from the outside, they seem perfectly fine, gentle, calm, in harmony with the world, but inside, they are regulating their heartbeat. They are forcing a smile and saying, it's okay, just to cover the undercurrent of fear, that they might be forgotten. And then, in a quiet moment, in the middle of the night, or when someone simply turns away, the old fear resurfaces, not violently, but as a familiar emptiness, as if they were standing in a crowded room and suddenly vanished from every gaze. The truth is, the body always remembers, and when the mind tries to forget, it only pushes the wound deeper, to where the heartbeat falters, the breath shortens, and dreams turn cold. In that place, silence is no longer an emotion, it becomes biology. Children have an extraordinary ability. They know how to survive, even when the world around them doesn't open its arms to hold them. But occasionally, that very ability to survive becomes the reason they lose themselves. When a child is ignored for long enough, they begin to learn how to walk softly, speak quietly, and exist less. They are afraid to ask or express because they're afraid that if they need too much, someone will leave. So instead of crying for help, they shrink inward. They learn to read other people's emotions, to anticipate their parents' moods, to adjust themselves just enough to fit the room. The quieter they are, the safer it feels. The less they ask fear, the less trouble they cause. That's the beginning of a deliberate disappearance. One day, the child brings home a drawing, messy, innocent, and full of color. They hand it to their mother, but she's on the phone. They try again at dinner, but the conversation moves on and no one asks, "What did you draw?" The child quietly folds the paper, puts it in a drawer, and never opens it again. For the first time in their life, they learn a lesson no child should ever have to learn. My joy isn't worth anyone stopping for. Years pass, the child grows up into someone who's very good at hiding feelings. When they're happy, they hold it back. When they're sad, they smile. When they're hurt, they say, "It's okay." Because somewhere deep inside, they believe that showing emotion is dangerous, but that safety becomes a prison. On the outside, they're gentle, understanding, and likable. On the inside, they're starving to be seen, but terrified of being noticed. They don't know how to ask. I don't know how to receive love because long ago they forgot how to believe that love could exist for them. And so a quiet paradox takes shape. They're afraid of being alone, yet only feel safe when they are. Not all parents are awful. Not all of them mean to hurt their children. Many of them are simply exhausted. Some carry wounds that were never healed, and so they unconsciously repeat what was once done to them. A father works 2 jobs, coming home only after his child has fallen asleep. A mother juggles duty, fatigue, and loneliness. A family dinner filled with conversation but no real presence. And in those quiet spaces between words, a child sits silently, chin resting on the table, staring at the face of the person they love most, and feels as though they're talking to a wall. That is the subtlest shape of neglect, presence without presence. The body is there, but the soul is not. The child doesn't understand why they feel cold. They only know that every time they try to share something, their voice catches in their throat. They're afraid of being a bother, afraid of indifferent eyes, afraid of the silence, which hurts more than scolding ever could. So they learn to manage alone. They grow into someone fiercely independent to the point of exhaustion. Someone who knows how to care for others, but not how to let others care for them. Or they become perfectionists, running endlessly to earn the gaze they never received. A person who always comes first, yet feels empty every night. Or worse, they become people pleasers. Experts at smoothing conflict so gentle that they disappear in every story. The price of peace is the burial of the self. And sometimes some children choose another path. They give up on connection altogether. They no longer wait to be seen, no longer want anyone to touch their softness. They close off, walking through life with a sleeping heart, believing, if no one cares, why should I try? Those survival strategies once helped them make it through childhood, but as adults, they become invisible chains, binding them to a loneliness they cannot even explain. There are wounds with no story to tell, no clear scene, no visible culprit, just a dull ache like smoke seeping through memory. Invisible, yet difficult to breathe in. Adults who were once neglected children often say, I didn't have a bad childhood. No one ever hit me. And then they smile, a soft, polite smile behind which lies a depth so vast they themselves dare not look into it. Because the pain of neglect doesn't lie in what happened, but in what never did. It's the hug that never came, the eyes that never lingered, silence swallowed the praise that never came. The pain of neglect makes no sound. It's like living in a house without air. You survive, but you can never breathe deeply. Such adults move through life with a sadness that has no name. They have friends, lovers, and families, yet still feel lonely even in someone's arms. Not because no one loves them, but because deep down they don't believe that love is for them. Modern psychology now shows that children who grow up unseen develop brains hypersensitive to distance. A message left unread can make their hearts race. A canceled plan can keep them awake all night. Their bodies live in a constant state of alert, always bracing for the moment they'll be forgotten again. They learn how to appear fine, but inside, every silence echoes like an old call. The voice of childhood whispering, is anyone there? A question that was never answered, and so, even as adults, even as strong, capable, accomplished people, they carry within them an emptiness. A fragment of the soul is still sitting by the door, waiting for someone to return just to say one small sentence. Mom, I'm here. At some point in life, in the stillness of the night or during an ordinary conversation, you begin to hear a faint sound, soft, fragile, yet patient. The voice of the child within you. It doesn't blame, it doesn't rage. It only asks one gentle question. Can anyone see me? That is the moment of awakening. Not a grand event, but a small shift in awareness like light slipping into a locked room that has been dark for years. You suddenly realize everything you've ever done, all your striving to be better, kinder, stronger, was in truth a way of asking to be seen. The child you once were is still there, sitting in the corner, knees drawn to chest, waiting for you to return. It doesn't need anyone else. It only needs you. Healing doesn't begin when you forgive the past, but when you dare to look at it without flinching, without analyzing, just seeing with eyes of compassion. From there, you start relearning the simplest truths, that it's okay to be tired, to be sad, to need, that love is not a reward for being good, but a birthright of being human. Sometimes healing begins with the smallest of gestures, stopping, taking a deep breath, and whispering to yourself, "I see you. I'm here with you." And in that moment, the forgotten child within you slowly lifts its head. It doesn't smile, it just looks at you, surprised at first. Then gradually, its gaze softens, as if finally, after all these years, it has been seen. When we begin to listen to the child within, something miraculous happens. Quietly, without fireworks, a silent rebirth. Science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, to rewrite the neural pathways once carved by pain. It means that no matter how fractured your childhood was, your brain can learn again. Learn what safety feels like. Learn what it means to be loved. Learn how to trust. Each time you dare to speak a true feeling, "I'm sad, I'm scared, I need to be heard," the brain takes note. This time, no one left. A new connection forms. A fresh signal replaces the old memory, and slowly, thread by thread, you begin to reweave the network of trust. The body begins to change too. Your heartbeat steadies, your breath deepens, your shoulders loosen, your eyes no longer scan for someone else's approval to feel worthy. Because now you have another witness, yourself. Healing is never a loud revolution. Sometimes it's just an evening sitting on your bed and for the first time in years, letting yourself cry not out of despair, but because you finally allowed yourself to feel. And sometimes it's something small. When someone asks, "Are you okay?" And instead of replying, "I'm fine," you say, "Not entirely, but I'm learning to be better." Each time you choose honesty, the brain loosens one more thread of the old wiring. Each time you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the body learns that safety isn't found in silence, but in presence, in being here fully. That's when the heart begins to remember its original rhythm, the rhythm of connection, the rhythm of life. You are no longer living in defense mode. You are simply living. And that, however small it may seem, is rebirth. No one truly escapes their childhood, but some, instead of being forever bound by it, choose to turn their wounds into light. Those who were once unseen, when they begin to heal, are not only saving themselves, they are ending a cycle that has echoed through generations, because often their parents too were once children who were forgotten, and that silence, that invisibility has been passed down life after life, until someone finally pauses, takes a deep breath, and says, "Enough, from now on I will see." When a person learns to listen to their inner child, they also learn to listen to others. When they learn to love themselves, they begin to love without causing harm. When they dare to say, "I'm hurting," they create space for others to say, "Me too." That's why healing is never a solitary journey. It ripples outward quietly, like warmth. Through the way we speak, the way we look at others, the way we pause before eyes, they silently seek understanding. Those who were once ignored often become the ones who see most deeply. They know what it feels like to be forgotten, so they don't forget anyone. They know what silence feels like, so they listen with their whole heart. And one day they realize something beautiful, that all those years of invisibility were not meant to make them disappear, but to refine the eyes of the soul so they could see others more clearly and see themselves more truly. If you were once that child sitting alone in a dim room, waiting for a glance, a question, a touch, know this: you are still here. You have always mattered. You have always been worthy of love, regardless of how lovable you feel. Healing is not about forgetting, it's about learning to look back with kindness. No longer blaming, no longer denying. I am just gently acknowledging the pain and expressing gratitude by saying, "Thank you for surviving." And in that moment, the silence of the past dissolves. It's no longer emptiness, but a space where light can enter. Because, in the end, the children who were once unseen were never truly invisible. They were only waiting for one thing, to be seen by themselves. And that's the content of this episode. If you feel a sense of resonance with these reflections, don't forget to follow the channel and stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. See you soon. Bye.